Hi. So the subject of today's video is um, actually topical because it is a holiday, and I think that people deserve to give themselves gifts. And I um, want to talk about um, hobbies that have an end. Um, and actually, during the pandemic, they really sort of started popping up where people would do things like they would do puzzles. Yeah, I've done puzzles. um, or they would do some sort of sewing project, or they would do Legos, or they would do something like that. And the reason why it was so um, popular was because there's nothing else to do. Well, some people with avoidant personality disorder have a lot of time on their hands. Um, but also because during the pandemic, things just sort of, if you were work from home especially, and your everything was shut down, you couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. I mean, you could order stuff to get delivered to your house. That was about it. Um, days just stretched on, and people talk about it all the time. They had a major problem with even telling like a weekday from a weekend. It was the same. What's the point of going on vacation? You're just going to stay home. No point in any of these changes that you're making in your life. And so these types of hobbies that had an end really, became popular because people could feel progress in their life, even if out in the world insanity was happening. And it didn't think that, days just stretched on. And that is a lot of how it feels when you have avoidant personality disorder. You feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's never going to change. You're never going to get the people in your life. You're never going to have interesting relationships. You're never going to have things change. That's what it feels like. And that's not true. Um, and for quite a long time, actually, um, I was in therapy basically to have a therapist say, hey, remember 2 months ago you were doing this and now you're doing this. Because I could not keep track of changes that I was making at all. Like I couldn't see that, X, Y, or Z um, was any different than it was. Everything seemed the same. So doing a hobby that had an end, um, and I don't even count reading as part of this, um, because that's escapism, and it's the same thing. I mean, yes, you started a book at the beginning and you ended at the end, and there's completion there, but it doesn't, um, because you're doing the escapism thing, you don't register the change, which I think is the most important thing about having a hobby that has an end. Um, that you start a project and you finish the project. Um, and sometimes it can be like a really short thing, and sometimes it can be like a long, long, long term thing. But I do definitely think that getting something that you do that you can have a sense of achievement and completion is really a very positive thing, just so that you can not get caught up in the cycle of nothing's ever going to change. And you can, especially if it's something that you can keep, you can look at it and say, see, I did this and I did this and I did this. And, you know, time has gone by. Um, and you're not really stuck in that nothing ever changes thing, because you just never know when things are going to change. Things have changed for me in the past 2 years. Can't believe it's only been 2 years. Just stunningly. That has made my life, I mean, some parts of it have been extraordinarily stressful, but so much better than the daily slog. I mean, at least I can register the stress as this is a significant stressful event, because before, every breath was just a high level stress. um, and and the thing is that you sort of get used to these levels in your life. So if you have what might seem like an ordinary good life, but it does not fulfill you, I mean, you even feel worse about that. I mean, if you were stressed out and fighting against the world, there's a reason to be depressed and stressed. And if you've got what looks on the surface to be like a perfect life, I can't tell you how many times people have said, "Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. You had just the one child. That's all you wanted." And I'm like, actually, that's not true at all. Thanks for the assumption. But no, I probably would have had like 4 or 5 kids if I could have. Um, but I didn't. I couldn't have. I didn't have the relationships in order to do it. And I mean, I had my son by myself. Um, that would have been fine. But um, I couldn't depend on anybody but myself, and I didn't make enough money to be able to basically take time off whenever a parcel of kids got sick. So no, I only had the one, and that's all I wanted. It's really annoying when people are like, "Oh, you've got the perfect life," because they assume that what you're doing is what you want to do. And a lot of times with avoidant personality disorder, there's some major, major things that you wish that you could have in your life. If you could allow yourself to have relationships and trust people and believe that the relationships are really work, and that you're worth it, basically, and sort of eligible to have them and all the things that go along with them. I mean, you don't have to, obviously. Look at what I do. You don't have to have somebody else, but it really helps a lot. And so, the grass is always greener. People might think, "Oh, you're doing these wonderful things," when in fact, you're kind of bummed because you wish you were doing X, Y, and Z also. Um, and it feels like that's never going to change. And sometimes it does. And if you 100% lose hope, then it won't. But if you keep trying, then it might. So having something to remind you that it's not truly, it might feel all the same, like nothing ever changes, but things do change, and you get a hobby that has an end, and you can see things have changed. That project wasn't even started, and now it's complete, and I can look at it and say, look, a change was made. And it might seem superficial, but that is why I think that, I sing the praises of doing little things like that, so that you can see change is still possible. You can still get stuff done. And the big impossible things, I mean, especially as you get something like, 10,000 Lego packaging, it's this massive box or something like that, and you're like, there's no way. I know that people have done it, but no, there's no way. And it takes you weeks and weeks and weeks, and then, hey, you did a thing that you said looked pretty dang impossible. With the skills that you have right now, you did a thing. I think it can give you hope doing something to completion when it feels like there's no hope and no reason to. Anyway.